We are no longer physicians. We're providers.
Ask your baby's permission.
Gay people, you have become a product. Should auto insurance cover STD? Are you freaking kidding me? So you demean us. You don't get a parade for a sexual preference. Cannot hurt the feelings of somebody with a fraction of my training. That a beaver's ass presented this to the world. It's a natural flavor. But you are literally an ice cube in a martini shaker. Bum, 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 Moran. Bum, bum, bum. Oh, you don't want to hear me sing. That's bad. No one will listen. All right, we're going to do something a little bit different today on Doctales with Cocktails. I am here by myself. My lovely wife is up in Canada visiting family. I am going to take you on a trip through the Middle East and give you my perspective of what in the wide, wide world of sports is going on in the world. My goal is to hopefully inform you, get people to think, and then give some tips on what I think you should do. You know, what should we do as, you know, red-blooded, freedom-loving Americans with all of this nonsense that's going on now that, you know, I guess it's 2 days ago now, 3 days ago, we sent 6 Moabs deep into the soil. So let's get right on it then. I'm going to start with a little history lesson because I think if we don't understand the history of the region, we can't kind of sort out the geopolitics of what's going on there. I'm going to move over a little bit there. That looks better. All right. So we got to start off with, you know, this all centers, the epicenter of this is obviously Israel, because Israel started the attacks on Iran on the 17th of June, and then we joined in on the 21st. So technically 2 days ago or yesterday, if you're watching live. So what's the deal and why did Israel do this? We're going to get to that in a bit. Let's go all the way back to the beginning of the modern state of Israel, excuse me, which started May 14th, 1948. So what happened was where the modern state of Israel is now is in a region of the Ottoman Empire called Palestine. Palestine was not a country. There was no country of Palestine. There was a region of the Middle East called Palestine. And through a whole bunch of things, starting with, you know, the Zionist movement, Jewish immigration in the 1920s after World War I, and the British, what did the British have? They had this declaration that they were going to start this, you know, that the world should have a place for Jewish settlers. And this all kind of, you know, Jews started immigrating there 20 plus years, like right after World War I, before even World War II, before the Holocaust. So they were going to carve up Palestine. And in 1947, the United Nations had this partition plan. The UN General Assembly voted to partition Palestine into a Jewish and Arab state with Jerusalem neutral, kind of like a world international city. So that's what was going to happen. And so then what ended up happening is a guy named David Ben-Gurion established the state of Israel in Tel Aviv. He said, okay, the UN says we're going to divide this up. This is going to be Israel. I proclaim this. It's a country. You know, this is the little area that they partitioned off on the banks of the Mediterranean. That's going to be Israel. Interestingly, you know, they talk about this two-state solution. Interestingly, at that time, the Palestinians didn't just go, okay, well, then this part's going to be ours. So what happened was May 14th, 1948, Israel becomes a state, and immediately, like the next day, they get attacked in a war. They win the war. They kind of establish themselves. It's like, okay, it's a country now. United Nations recognizes this as a country. So there you go. You have the state of Israel. All right. But what's really interesting about the Middle East is that most of what we, you know, the hotbed of the Middle East that we're concerned with was part of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire lasted for 600 years. it ceased to exist at the end of World War I, which was 1918. So at the end of World War I, you have the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire. So all of these countries in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, didn't exist until 1932. Kuwait did not exist as an independent country. It was a British protectorate prior to that till 1961. Iraq, 1932. Iran is different, and it's very, very interesting because Iran was not part of the Ottoman Empire. Iran was the Persian Empire. Iran is really Persia. It's fascinating. If you've ever talked to people or visited or been friends with people from Iran, they are Persians and they are passionate about this. They do not speak Arabic. They speak Farsi. They have their own language. It's really offensive. Trust me, I know. I had a Persian medical student, and you try to equate, Persia with Arabia, and that is like that's not cool, to say the least. So Iran becomes modern Iran around 1905 to 1911. So they weren't really affected in the same way Saudi Arabia, Syria, Jordan, all of these other countries that were part of the Ottoman Empire were, and basically got these borders carved up, and then there was wars and protectorates either of Britain or of France, and skirmishes and tribal warfare and whatnot that went on. So it's not just like, you hear this protesting where it's, Israel, they're the occupiers. Well, then everyone is the occupiers, because there clearly had been, Jewish people in the Middle East for a long time. There was clearly a state of Israel, like in the Bible, like way back in antiquity, and it was the same place that Israel is now. And borders change, and there's wars, and when there's wars, the world gets carved up. That's kind of what happens in war, and that's what happened to the Middle East. It all got carved up because of World War I primarily, and World War II, and the borders got redrawn, sometimes in completely ridiculous ways, because they weren't redrawn based on, religious or ethnic reasons. They'd be, redrawn because there's a river there, or, all this kind of crazy stuff. So that's what happened. So the Middle East was the modern Middle East was birthed out of map drawing after 1914. So though these cultures are ancient, the languages are ancient, the traditions are ancient, all of these things, the countries aren't. None of them are. Like I said, Kuwait was 1961. Israel was 1948. So, nobody says, does Kuwait have a reason to exist? All this kind of stuff. So it's really, really important. And it's not, people don't understand this. I remember I had a Jordanian medical student, 20 some years ago. And he's like, of course there was a country of Palestine. I said, no, there never was. It's part of the Ottoman Empire. And then it was never it was a province. It was never an independent nation. It's part of the Ottoman Empire. And so there's a lot of misperception. And I really wanted to talk a little bit about the historical relevance to understand all these countries, including Israel, as they exist now as modern countries, are modern inventions. Canada, 1867, is ancient compared to most of the countries in the Middle East. That's kind of a mind blower. Okay. So there we go. All right. So there's my little history primer. Now let's go to present day. So I've been listening to a lot of different podcasts, listening to the news, keeping an eye on social media, and it goes from reasonable to insane in about 2 seconds, depending on who you listen to. Somebody I have a significant amount of respect for as a thinker is Brent Weinstein. He has a podcast called The Evolutionary Lens that he does with his wife, kind of like May and I. They're a little more serious and think think the NPR people. That's a good way to think of it. So at any rate, let's listen to what Brett has to say about what's going on in Iran. And all of these clips are before the actual bombing took place, from the United States, because that's absolutely hot off the press. And that's why I wanted to get this out sooner than later, because I think it's really important how we think about this, but I think more important, I think it's really important how we emotionally react to this kind of news. And we'll get to that at the end of the show. So let's listen to Brett.
Well, you're going to be told it is, and you're going to find out at the end of it whether they knew what they're talking about. But in general, wars are started by narratives that turn out to be faulty. And if you're not asking that question on the front end, you're missing it. But then here's the other thing. So in terms of things that are missing from people's models, they need to realize the neocons are back. They may not travel under that banner. They need to realize we don't know what the implication of the Jeffrey Epstein story is for geopolitics, but it's not going to be nothing. We need to know that Colin Powell, in a situation that was not identical but had many similarities, pushed us into war that we came to regret as a nation because we couldn't get out of it, and because the amount of treasure and life that was lost in that conflict was spectacular. And as bad as it was for us, it was way worse for Iraq. And then finally, the thing I have yet to hear anybody else mention, and I'm not saying it's not been mentioned, I'm just saying it's not a big enough part of our conversation that it's showing up where it should, is that the problem with Iran is the result of regime change by the West. Full stop. So what people don't know in general is that in the 50s, between 1951 and 53, Iran was in the process of becoming a democratic state under a person, Mohammad Mossadegh. And Mossadegh nationalized the oil companies, or the British Oil Company, what is now British Petroleum, but was called by another name at the time. He nationalized effectively the control over the oil in Iran. Now, you may have mixed emotions about that. You've got a company, it's doing business in Iran, extracting oil. Presumably Iran is getting some benefit for that. But you can imagine the Iranians discovering or realizing that they didn't have a good deal, that they had a hugely important resource, and it would have become apparent by the early 50s how important that resource was, not just in terms of its value in terms of wealth, but its strategic importance, that you might imagine that somebody like Mossadegh would think, well, actually, we have everything we need to be a, well-run, prosperous, powerful country right here, because we are sitting on this huge oil resource. And unfortunately, the way our deal is structured with Britain, the benefit of that oil is largely going to them and not us. That's our oil. So he nationalizes it. Now, I'm not saying that's the right decision or the wrong decision. I really don't know enough about it. But the point is, his nationalizing of the oil industry in Iran resulted in the British and the US, MI6 and the CIA overthrowing Mossadegh. What was the result of that? They installed a monarch, the Shah. Now, there's a history there with Shahs, but never mind. Fact is, we went from having a Iran on a trajectory towards modernization, towards secularization, as had already occurred in Turkey. Mm-hmm. And it went from that to a monarchy, where it continued with a strong degree of Western modernization, which then all resulted in a massive Islamic theocratic revolution that ousted the Shah and replaced him with the Ayatollah. So to the extent that we look at Iran and it looks like it is a country from another barbaric century, and of course it's a problem for the world because of its bloodthirsty theocratic nature, that's what regime change does.
Okay, so the one thing I'm not entirely sure of, I agree with them. I think that in all likelihood, the regime change, say that 10 times fast, the regime change is what spurred on the Islamic Revolution, which brought us, Ayatollah Khomeini, way back whenever that was, 1979. I remember that. I was in ninth grade. The hostage taking, the Jimmy Carter crashing the helicopters in the desert, all of that kind of stuff. I think that's probably true. It doesn't mean that if they would have just continued modernizing, that they wouldn't have also had a theocratic uprising and a Islamic jihadist revolution. You don't know. But I think it's reasonable that under the Shah, things got worse, and then, whatever. So this whole regime change with British intelligence and U.S. intelligence is probably what spurred that on. So I like that perspective, because it kind of paints the picture of, how much should we really be messing around with other countries? And it also brings out the assumption, which is, why regime change? Well, if you believe Mike Benz and all the things that have been going on with the NGOs and all that, it's basically, the premise is the military and the deep state mess with these other countries to maintain markets. So the assumption is Iran had tons of oil, so let's exploit that oil so they can't become some crazy jihadist country. We need to maintain, or they can't become, God forbid, a socialist country, which is what it looked like was going to happen under that initial leader, democratic leader, because we got to control our oil. We don't want nationalized oil. We want British Petroleum and who knows who in there. Okay. So I get that. That makes sense. Is that exactly what, why it happened? Probably the deep state, the intelligence agencies actually work to screw around with other governments so that we can open up foreign markets. I don't think that that's a stretch. The question is that good or bad? I mean, would you rather have American markets opened, or would you rather have somebody else's deep state opening them, for them, like the stuff that China's doing with buying up all these resources in essentially countries in Africa? So it's going to happen. And it gets to a bigger point, which is, international diplomacy, foreign policy isn't like the rule of law. It's not like living in an HOA where everyone kind of wants to get along and you got a couple Karens at the end of your block that screw everything up, and then you have to figure out how to deal with that. That's not really how it works. International relations is far more akin to the mafia, the mob. And I'll get back to that. So you have to think of it that way. It's like, oh, they're taking over outside of the street. We're going to teach them a lesson and throw out their leader, or, kill their kid and put him out on the stoop. That's really how international stuff works. I'm not saying it's right. It's just how it is. And it's how it's been since Cain and Abel. So it's more like gangland than it is, like your happy HOA. So that's an interesting clip with an interesting historical perspective. Now we're going to move on. Oh my gosh. To Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz having a fight. It's delicious. The video on this isn't quite as good, but the sound is great, and that's the main thing. So listen to this, and then I'm going to go completely ape on this one.
Let's get into Iran momentarily, but you suggested it was a strange thing that I said a minute ago, that when I came into the Senate, I resolved that I was going to be the leading defender of Israel. And what you didn't ask is why. So let me tell you why.
No, you said I was obsessed with Israel, and you had just told me that, like, your driving motive to get to the Senate was to defend Israel. I'm like, I don't think I'm the one who's obsessed with Israel.
Okay.
So
Tucker, words matter.
Uh-huh.
And you know that. I said I resolved to be the leading defender of Israel, and you said your driving motive, the reason you're in the Senate.
You want to be the leading defender of Israel. I would think if I ran for Senate, I'd be like, there are people dying of drug ODs on the street.
My driving motive is to fight for Texas and America, and to fight for jobs, and to fight for the Constitution. And you played a very, very careful word game of eliding
You're the
it.
one who said it,
Okay.
not me.
So you still haven't asked why, but I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
And the reason is twofold. Number one, as a Christian, growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of it, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my. You pull out the phone and use the Google.
It's in Genesis. But so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it. And you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology. I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two,
Hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the descendants of Abraham.
Okay, if I watch that any longer, my head will absolutely blow up, which will be amazing for the number of views I'm going to get. Okay. We are commanded as Christians. This is what he said. We are commanded as Christians to bless Israel. Okay? That's okay. That's all fine and good if we can find that. It's not in the New Testament. Jesus didn't come down and say, bless Israel or you will be cursed. I found the verse in an actual Bible. Can you believe it? It's called Genesis 12. And this is way back before Abraham was Abraham. He was still Abram. And this is, I'm going to read contextually. So several of the verses so you get it. Okay. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name so that you will be a blessing. Okay, he said that to Abram. Now here's the verse. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you, I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Okay, I'm going to read that again. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you, I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. It says absolutely nothing about Israel. It says everything about Abram. So was that a blessing to the entire nation of Israel, or a curse to those that dishonor the nation of Israel? Maybe. But it seems like a little bit of a stretch because it says you, like God is blessing the individual guy, Abram. And somehow this has become evangelical dogma that we have to go along with everything that goes on with Israel. And no criticism of the political system, no criticism of what they do, no criticism of their wars. Like, tell me you're insane without telling me you're insane. That is so crazy to me. And it's such a stretch of what that scripture says. If you take it exactly literally, what it means is the people that are for Abram will be blessed, and the people that are against him will be cursed. That's it. It doesn't say the people that bless you and your gazillion descendants that are greater than the sand on the seashore or the stars in the sky. It says Abram. That's it. It's a total stretch of that scripture. Total stretch. Plus, you have to not just read scripture in one verse. You have to read it not just in the totality of the chapter and the book. You have to read it in the totality of the entire Bible. And if you don't think criticizing Israeli foreign policy is a problem, then you're going to have if that's a problem for you, you're going to have a problem with God. Because the entire Old Testament is filled with God criticizing Israeli foreign policy. They disobey God because they didn't kill the entire country they were supposed to conquer. And they took their gods and worshiped the wrong God. Or they didn't have mercy on who they were supposed to have mercy on. Or they married women that corrupted their belief structure. On and on and on and on for hundreds and hundreds of years. The entire Old Testament is filled with criticisms of the state of Israel. So, Ted, get your tithes back from whatever church you went to that was teaching you this. But I get it. I get it. I grew up in an evangelical churches. I still go to one. And thankfully, I don't think that's what the church I go to now thinks, but that's what I was raised with. If you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse Israel, you'll be cursed. Actually read the actual verse and the actual Bible, and then your mind is blown. Like, what in the world? Like, tell me you have not actually thought about this without telling me you have actually not thought about this. Completely nuts. Okay. Now we get to somebody who is actually reasonable. A young woman named Noah Tishby, who is a smoking hot actress who actually served in the Israeli defense. So it's fascinating. Let's listen to what she has to say on Adam Carolla's show.
And they fetishize the Levant while cosplaying and pretending to be some sort of Middle Eastern, like, you know, it's Orientalist keffiyeh wearing, Karens wearing keffiyeh. They literally don't understand the culture in the Middle East. They don't understand the culture of radical Islam. They don't understand the culture of jihadism. They don't understand when you talk to these people and you try to explain to them what Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, what is that country about? They don't know this. So they don't know that by supporting Hamas and by supporting, like, not being against Israel, taking action in the Middle East, which is what's happening right now, they're actually leaving every single moderate and woman and LGBTQ plus community, every person that they say that they're supporting, they're leaving them out to dry in the Middle East because those are the most oppressive regimes and they need to be taken out. And that's what Israel is doing right now. And when people ask me, what do I think about what's happening right now, about this war that is out in the open between Israel and Iran, it's been covert for decades. Iran has been attacking Israel and the U.S. and U.S. allies for decades, but hiding behind proxies like Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah, right? What I say about what's happening right now is you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. We're doing right now, just imagine if we can take back time and go back to before North Korea had a nuclear bomb and take that out. Just imagine what the world is going to be like, so what the world would have been like right now. So we made that mistake in the 90s. We sat around with an irrational regime and we signed a deal that we thought was a rational deal. And now we ended up with nukes in North Korea. It's the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is a fundamentalist, Islamist, insane, psychotic, backwards, middle-aged regime that is oppressing its own people, cannot be allowed to have a nuclear bomb or ballistic missile program.
Right.
And we're doing the job that the world needs to do, and we're just doing it for everybody else.
Well,
and you know what? The Saudis know this, the Emiratis know this, all these people in the Middle East, they absolutely know this. And I know that they're supporting what's happening right now. And hopefully Iran will come to the table to have a conversation faster rather than not.
That video you spoke of, any other clues or my people could find it on the internet?
That one I have a hard time disagreeing with. I think that, like I just ranted about Ted Cruz, I think criticizing the government of Israel is completely fair game. Just like criticizing the government of the United States is completely fair game. That said, we kind of get pushed into this picking sides thing, right? And it's getting super duper weird because, we got really burned by the, Bush doctrine that somehow if we invade Iraq and we, kick out Saddam Hussein, then they're all going to become Thomas Jefferson and be engaged 100% in, free market capitalism and freedom and, whatever. Well, it didn't work that way because it's a different culture. It's the same mistake we made in China that, that whole reaching into China, which was an agrarian country. It was basically people just subsisting off of growing their own food. Nixon went in 72, 73 and open relations. And then Clinton gave China, what do they call that? Preferred status or whatever, where, opening trade to China. We're like, when China gets a taste of trade and wealth, they'll become freer. Well, that's not what happened. What happened is when they got more money through more trade, they just became better at being totalitarians. And it reminds me of the quote of, I have no idea who quoted this, but it's a brilliant, brilliant quote. He was talking about drug addiction and malfeasance in like rock stars. And he said, money is an accelerant. Whoever you are, if you add more money, you're more of what you are. So if you're a dirtbag drug addict, rock star philanderer, you'll be more of that. You'll have more opportunities to kill yourself with drugs because you'll have more money to do it. So money's an accelerant. If you're a generous person and you love taking vacations with your family and you love sharing your wealth, you'll do more of that with more money. If you're a totalitarian regime that likes to pull people's organs out and have children make Nike shoes, you'll get more of that with more money. Money is an accelerant. And somehow we thought, we're going to introduce freedom. It's arrogance. We're so arrogant that we thought, as soon as they taste it, it's welcome to Thomas Jefferson. No, doesn't work that way. So we kind of get forced to take sides. And kind of the weirdest thing I've seen in social media and in comments on Substack is there's a couple things. One of them is, Trump has denied us. Trump has, betrayed us because he started this war. Well, that might be true. There's some elements of truth to that. Because way back in 2007, Wesley Clark said, Wesley Clark was a general. I think he was a 4-star general. So he was in the, middle of everything. And he talked about how there was a plan to take out 7 countries: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off with Iran. And that's basically what's happened. Syria went into a civil war. The Russians got involved. We got involved. Kind of no winners on that one. Iraq is what it is, right? Weapons of mass destruction, massive psyop. I went along with that. Every single conservative commentator, including Tucker Carlson, went along with that. And I think that's why he's so anti all this other stuff. I think he's kind of having a reaction formation and freaking out the other direction. But at the same time, what's missing in all of this, is if you're going to choose a side, who are you going to pick? Like, and how are you going to pick, right? Like, exactly what Noah Tishby said is true. It's true. Like, I think the Iran government is a crazy Islamist psychotic regime. I think it's true. And it's evidenced by what happened a couple years ago with the Mahsa Amini protests. So Mahsa Amini was this woman who didn't wear her hijab, I'm sorry, did I offend you? Correctly. And the guidance police, so they literally have morality police in Iran, picked her up and essentially beat her to death. She died in police custody. And it caused almost an entire year of rioting for women's rights and all of this kind of business. So, okay, compare that Compare that to the beaches of Tel Aviv on the Mediterranean, where women can happily wear bikinis like they're here in Florida. So if you're going to choose between burqas and bikinis, what side are you on? I know which side I'm on. It's not the we throw gays off the roof of buildings and, women have to cover their head. I'm sorry. It just like it's common sense. And it's weird because there's been this really I get it. I get the anti-war thing, especially after the Iraq war and what's gone on over the last 20 years. I understand that. But every single military operation the U.S. does isn't an insane foreign war. It might be, and what Trump has started now may end up being an insane foreign war. We don't know. We also don't know the data he's making decisions on. We don't have that intel. So people just fill it in, and they fill it in with insane stuff. I hear all this criticism of Israel and no criticism of the countries that throw gays off roofs. And I'm like, really? Like, I get it. Is Israel being barbaric in what's going on in Gaza? It sure looks that way. Should they have done it another way? I don't know, because I don't know if there's another way to do it. I don't. Because all of the narrative, all of the information you're getting out of Israel in a war is 100% censored by their government. They have complete control over the media in wartime. So we don't have the intel. We don't know. But at the same time, there's this part of the back in my brain, which is like, they wanted to take out these 7 countries, and it seems like they're taking out these 7 countries. Is it just the deep state manipulating Trump like they did with COVID? Because they surely fooled him with COVID and the vaccine and I don't know. And that's the thing. I don't know. But who do you trust? Do you trust Pete Hegseth that fought in the stupid Iraq war and J.D. Vance that fought in the same war, and they don't like that? And Trump, who's always been forever, like way back in the days of Interviewed with Oprah, was always against these stupid incursions into other parts of the world, especially when, what was it, a month, 6 weeks ago, he went and did this speech where it's like, I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your traditions are. Let's trade and make some money. He went to the Middle East, he went to Saudi Arabia and gave this massive speech to tons of Middle Eastern countries and basically said, let's get along. Let's, do you, but let's get along. We each have great resources. Let's make trade deals. Let's make each other rich. So I find it hard to believe, given that all of a sudden Trump is going to be like, let's start another 20-year war to keep the military-industrial complex happy. Maybe that's going on. But I mean, the stuff I've seen on comments on social media and Substack, Trump is the Israelis' puppet. They have Epstein Island video of Trump and they're making him do this. And it just makes me crazy. Like, again, burqas or bikinis, man. There's a major league difference. Plus, what possible motivation does Israel have to bomb the living hell out of a country that's like 2 countries away from them? It's not like they're expanding their borders. They don't border Iran. They have to fly over Iraq or Jordan to get there. They're not going to, do a land invasion. They're a tiny country of 7 million, 10 million people, maybe. 7.2 million Jews live in Israel. So I don't get it. Like, is it, I mean, I don't know. There's really only 2 options. They're a proxy for all the gigantic central bankers in the world, and they got to stabilize or at least keep the Middle East unstable so that, none of these Middle Eastern countries have too much power and we control oil prices and all this stuff, or they're actually scared to death that Iran is going to do what they say and wipe them off the face of the earth, which they have said before. So if you believe the mullahs in Iran that they want to wipe them off the face of the earth, and Israel, who's probably, the Mossad, probably the greatest spy agency ever in the history of spy agencies, they infiltrated that place so deeply, it was unbelievable. The way they took those strikes, decapitated their nuclear scientists and their military. They had to have penetrated that place for years and years, probably decades. So is this vengeance, or are they actually nervous that they're going to get a nuke and potentially wipe them off the face of the earth? There's only a couple options. And so, but again, I don't know, because I don't have Israeli intel. I don't have American intel. And I'm unwilling to just make something up to fit my narrative of the day, because it's really cool to be 100%, 100% of the time against any foreign military incursions, so that I'm just going to, make it up, like the Jews control the world. Like, what? Really? There's like almost 16 million Jews in the entire world, and there's 8 billion people in the entire world. If they control the entire world, then I want to know, I want what they're doing. Like, give me the secret sauce, the secret Jew sauce that allows you to have that kind of power and that kind of intelligence and that kind of expertise, that a tiny group of people can have that much power. I mean, I get it. I get it's possible. But, like, what if they did control the world? Like, the underlying assumption in that is, if that's bad, it's because they're bad or they're cheating you. Otherwise, it's like they make great movies. Metro Golden Mare, right? Jewish studio, movies, comedians, Mel Brooks, Jerry Seinfeld. Tremendous businesses. Like, I'm just like, it's just so hollow and so dumb. Now, at the same time, it's very difficult to listen to somebody like Mark Levin freak out, and anyone at all who ever disagrees with anything the Israeli government does, you're immediately an anti-Semite. No, I'm disagreeing with the government. I'm not indicting a race of people or a religion of people. I'm sorry. It doesn't make me anti anything. It makes me pro debate and pro free thought. So it goes both ways. And I just hate that. When I hear that, as soon as somebody says, I don't think Israel should have attacked Iran, you're an anti-Semite. It's like, it's exactly the same thing as, I don't think a kid that's 13 years old that's confused about their gender should have their genitals cut off. And then I'm a transphobe. No. It's the same idiotic argument, and I reject it on both sides. I hate that. Sorry, I just do. All right. So moving on. So much of this confusion is brought on because we have been psyoped over and over and over again. And COVID blew the lid off of this and showed us how psyoped we've actually been. Incredibly psyoped, right? And even recently, like the protests, the No Kings protest, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, so the day they schedule the protest is like the exact time when Israel starts attacking Iran. And I'm like, that smells like a psyop to me. Police cars underneath the bridge where lime scooters are being rained down on them and they can't reverse out of the way, looks like a psyop to me. Like, it gets so crazy. I don't know who's zooming who, to quote Aretha Franklin. Like, it just gets nuts. You're sick of it, safe and effective. The science is there, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, to do gender affirming care. Like, complete insanity. So we get it. We've been psyoped. We've been burnt. But that doesn't mean every single thing the government does is PSYOP. And it doesn't mean every single foreign military incursion is unneeded or endless foreign war, because we don't have enough data. So when that happens, you're living in Psyopistan. There's no question. And we have, for all of our lifetimes, it's been Psyopistan. It's been propaganda and manipulation and all sorts of stuff. What are you going to do about it, though? What are you going to do about it? I think that this is the most critical piece to this puzzle, because this isn't going to be the last foreign war we're involved in. This isn't going to be the last time we're psyoped. It happens all the time. If you have a social media account, if you have a television, if you watch the news on the internet, you are being manipulated. There's no question of that. So I have come up with 3 things that are very important to conceptualize and do when it comes to immunizing yourself from Psyopistan. Number 1 is don't be a useful idiot. So the whole concept of useful idiot, it was wrongly attributed to a quote of Vladimir Lenin, but basically it's somebody. I love this definition. Is a derogatory political term for individuals who are naive or easily manipulated to support a cause without fully understanding its true nature or consequences. Brilliantly written. Thank you, AI, for that one. Yes. So useful idiots. So don't be a useful idiot. So what does that mean? Reposting every single narrative talking point that your side is doing so that you feel like a righteous keyboard warrior. Useful idiot. Going out with dinner with friends and just spouting the narrative that you've never researched, you've never thought about, that promotes something that you may not even agree with because you don't understand it. Useful idiot. So don't be a useful idiot. Point 2, how do you not be a useful idiot? Check your emotions. The way we are manipulated, especially with the algorithms and social media, is emotionally by 3 emotions: fear, anger, pride. That's it. That's what I see. All of them blind you. When you're really scared, you'll go along with anything. When you're going to lose your job, you're going to go along with a mandate. Fear blinds. Anger blinds. Maybe the most dangerous is arrogance. Arrogance blinds. It was arrogant to think we could go into Iraq and turn it into, Kansas. Not going to happen. Fear is dealt with by knowledge and faith. Understanding there's something bigger than the present day, and understanding that there's a God that's bigger than the present day kills fear. Kills fear. Understanding the situation, understanding that there's nothing new under the sun, helps kill fear. Understanding that you can handle more than you think you can kills fear. What was the primary motive in COVID? It was fear. It was fear. Arrogance. Thinking that we know more than we know. We don't know. I have no idea what decision I'd make if I was given the intel that Trump was given, because I don't have it. But somehow, some guy in his parents' basement in Iowa hammering away on a keyboard somehow knows it. No, he doesn't. You don't know. Put the arrogance aside. We don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I pray to God Trump's right. And it's like, well, we kicked them in the ass. They're going to negotiate and everyone's going to be happy and we are going to have peace and there's going to be no nuclear weapons and Israel can take a gigantic chill pill and stop killing people. That's what I hope. But I don't know. And anger. Let it go. Man, I tell you, one of I get so angry at some of these posts, and I get in these little social media debates with people, and I'm like, why am I so angry? Am I angry because I'm scared for that person's soul because they believe something that's so heinous that it needs to be corrected? Or I have compassion for them that it drives me to anger for how deceived they are by somebody else? Or is it just that I'm angry because I want to be right and I think they're a dick? It's usually the last thing. I don't need that in my life. I need way, way, way less of that, actually. To quote Tucker Carlson, actually. Yeah, I can't do it. It drives me nuts. And finally, why? Why do we do this? Why do we try to not be a useful idiot? Why do we check our emotions? Here's the bottom line. It's to fight the good fight. Not every fight. If you're Pete Hegseth, Iran is your good fight. If you're J.D. Vance or Donald Trump, it's your good fight. It's not mine. The only fighting I get to do with regards to this is voting every 2 years. That's it. My good fight is fighting for medical freedom, is helping people understand that they can be their own best doctor. That's my good fight. What's yours? Maybe you're the parent of young children, and your good fight is just raising the coolest kids in the world so you can be as proud as I am someday when you look back at your kids that are college graduates and you go, we did something right. We did something right. Fight your fight. Ask the question of yourself, what's my fight? Because I'm telling you, social media, TV, sometimes your neighbors are all weapons of mass distraction. Can you imagine how much more effective we'd be in our careers, in our churches, in the causes we hold dear if we weren't distracted by every single freaking crisis that may be real or manufactured or manipulative or sports or who knows what? Because we know that's what's going on. We know they're trying to distract us. Fight the good fight, which is your fight. And that, my friends, is the end of this Doctales. And I will drink to that.